Every year, Sir Topham Hatt and his grandson Stephen have an annual fishing trip. Stephen always picks an engine that takes them to Arlesdale Lake on Duck's branch line. They go fishing and have a picnic, and at the end of the day the engine takes them home. All of the engines want to be chosen for the annual fishing trip. One day, James and Percy were at Kirk Ronan Station. "I sure hope Stephen chooses me this year." Percy groaned. "Every year you want Stephen to pick you, but you never get picked. Besides, I'm next in line to take the train this year." "Pah! There's no line." "Yes, there is. Last year it was Toby's turn, and the year before that it was Thomas's turn, so it's bound to be me." "How so?" "Because we all work on Thomas's branch line." "There isn't a line. This year Stephen will choose me for my bright red paint and gleaming coat. Not for a silly puffed-up green caterpillar with red stripes. Good day, Percy." Percy was cross. A few days later, Sir Topham Hatt and Stephen came to the shed. "All right, Stephen. Pick an engine that you want to have take us to the lake." Stephen looked around. The engines smiled. Each of them wanted to be chosen. I want James to take us." James smiled from buffer to buffer. Percy was very cross. So were the other engines. "And I want to ride in Annie and Clarabelle, too." "I'm sorry, Stephen, but Thomas needs to use those coaches." Stephen looked sad. "Don't you worry, Stephen. Those coaches aren't that great. We'll get some that are even better." Stephen smiled. Then Sir Topham Hatt and Stephen climbed aboard James. James left as the other engines watched with envy. Thomas and Percy were very cross. James collected some coaches and headed through the countryside on his way to the lake. James was very pleased. James rattled through the junction and came to sandy beaches on Duck's branch line. Stephen got even more excited. "I was chosen for my bright red paint, so now I must hurry. I can't be late." He whistled to Oliver and Duck as he passed by. A long time ago, before Duck's branch line was reopened and given to him for use, the line used to go over the lake like a bridge. But the strength of the bridge was weak, so when the line was reopened, they made the track go around the lake instead. But moss and undergrowth had jammed the points to go on the old track. But without the bridge, the line goes straight into the water. Duck and the other engines usually have to go slow when going over the points so they don't get derailed. James didn't know this. He was going too fast when he passed the points, and he ran straight into the lake. James laid in the lake water. Sir Topham Hatt and Stephen climbed out of the coaches. They telephoned for the breakdown train. Percy soon arrived with the breakdown train. James was lifted back on the rails. "Look, I found a big red fish in the lake." Stephen laughed. "Looks like we got our catch of the day." James felt very silly. Later, Percy returned to Tidmouth's sheds. James had been in the shed since he had gotten cleaned and fixed up. James was feeling bad about his accident. "Don't worry. Sir Topham Hatt isn't cross. You did nothing wrong." "I'm sorry for being cheeky and rude to you." "It's okay. And I'm sorry for being snooty and rude to you as well." Sir Topham Hatt came up to speak to James. "James, you've given Stephen one of the most memorable fishing trips. Thank you. We had a great day." James felt happy. It may have not been the best fishing trip, but it sure was one not to forget. One day, Duncan was in a bad mood. He was worse than usual. Duncan grumbled while he did his work. Some of the other engines finally had enough, and they confronted Duncan. "That's enough. Tell us what's bothering you." Duncan sighed. "It's always Skarloey, Rheneas, and Duke who are always getting praised for their age and their wisdom." "So?" "I'm kinda jealous of them. I'm just the engine who always gets scolded and can't do anything right." Duncan huffed away. The engines were concerned about Duncan, but they didn't know what to do. Later, Duncan was shunting coaches in the yard. He was still thinking about what he had said to the other engines. He wasn't thinking about his work and accidentally sorted a mismatched combination of coaches. He then went to shunt some other ones. Rheneas pulled in to collect his train. He was furious to see that it wasn't the right coaches. "Duncan, why is my train made up of different coaches?" Duncan looked at the coaches and realized what he had done. "Oh, I'm sorry, Rheneas. I'll fix that." "There's no time for that," Duncan's driver explained to him. "The train is due and we must keep to our schedule." Rheneas moaned. He took the train with an angry look on his face at Duncan. Duncan felt really silly now, and he slowly puffed away, more discouraged than ever. Duncan felt unhappy. He couldn't please anyone. He was in the way all the time and was always in trouble. He couldn't get praised like Skarloey, Rheneas, or Duke. Duncan puffed into the slate mines. He didn't feel like doing work. He was too sad. But Duncan still wanted to impress everyone, so he could get praise too. Duncan looked up and saw the big slate incline. Suddenly an idea flew into Duncan's funnel. "If I put as many trucks as I can on the slate incline, I'll get praised for getting the most work done." So Duncan set to work and he put as many cars as he could on the incline. Once he had collected all the trucks, Duncan went to a siding to watch. The winch began to pull the cars. There was barely enough weight from the loaded cars, so the long line of empty cars moved slowly. Slowly but surely the cars moved up. Then there was trouble. The cars were too heavy and the winch couldn't pull them. Suddenly the coupling snapped. The empty cars ran down the incline and right off the rails. Duncan was horrified. His plan had turned into a disaster. "Oh no! Now I'm going to be in so much trouble." Duncan thought of what he could do to fix his mess. He thought and thought. Then Duncan got another idea. He decided to race down the line. He soon arrived at the sheds. Duncan's driver explained to some workmen the situation. The workmen climbed into a brake van, and Duncan hurried back up to the slate incline. When Duncan arrived, the workmen began cleaning up the mess. That evening in the sheds, Sir Topham Hatt came to see Duncan. Duncan was worried that he'd be scolded and punished for putting too many trucks on the incline, and for messing up Rheneas' train. But Sir Topham Hatt was smiling. "Good work today, Duncan. You acted quickly in an emergency and got the tracks cleared. Well done. I'm very glad to have you on my railway. Thank you for being such a really useful engine today." Duncan was thrilled. The other engines cheered for Duncan and told him how great he had been. Duncan was very proud of his good work. Rheneas, the little engine, had been in a grumpy mood lately. He would grumble about his work and complain whenever the other engines tried to talk to him. One day, Duke and Rusty were resting at a station with their passenger trains. "Please tell me about what happened to Smudger." Duke laughed. Rheneas passed by with a goods train. He was cross. "What's wrong with him?" "Who knows?" Later that day, Rheneas was taking a train of passengers to the mountains. He stopped at a station. Rusty was there with a supply train and some workmen. "So I think I've almost gotten Duke to tell me about what happened to Smudger." "Enough with you and those stupid stories." And Rheneas fumed away. Rusty was very confused. Rusty took the supply train up to the mountains. On the way back, he stopped at a station. Skarloey and Duke were sitting in a shed next to the station. Rusty told them about Rheneas. "I don't know what's wrong with him. He's been acting so upset lately. Mainly when you, Duke, bring up stories about your old railway." "I don't understand. What's so wrong about some fun old stories during my days with Stewart and Falcon?" "I don't know, but he seems pretty unhappy." "Well, then maybe I'll just have to give him a talk." And Duke puffed away. "I hope he knows what he's doing." Duke went about his daily work. Later that day, Duke had to help out at the slate mines. When Duke got there, Rheneas and Peter Sam were already hard at work. The foreman called all the engines together. "All right, we've got a lot to do today. We need a long line full of slate trucks ready at 5 o'clock to be taken to the wharf. I think you guys can do it if you work hard and work together. Now hurry and let's get the job done." So the three little engines got to work. Rheneas rushed around the yard trying to find empty slate trucks. Peter Sam would organize them and hook them up to the winch. Then the slate trucks would go up the incline from the weight of the loaded ones coming down. Duke would take the loaded ones and organize them in the sidings. All three engines were very busy, and soon the work was almost done. Peter Sam had to take an evening train, so it was just Duke and Rheneas left to finish the job. It was getting late, and Rheneas wanted to be done. He shunted as many trucks together and began hooking them up the incline. "Stop! Stop! Stop!" the foreman shouted. They unhooked some of the cars. Rheneas was cross. "You know, that reminds me of a story back in the old days on my old railway." "Enough! I'm sick of it!" And he stormed away out of the slate mines. Duke felt bad. So he finished the train and went to find Rheneas. He searched all along the tracks. Duke looked over the whole valley and he couldn't find him. Now he really felt bad. Duke was about to go home when he saw Rheneas ahead, all alone. Duke pulled up. "What do you want?" "I want to apologize. I didn't mean to make you feel bad. But I just don't understand why you don't like me telling stories about my old railway." "It's just that it seems like you guys had such a great time on your old railway without us. And now on the railway here with us, it's not as fun." Duke chuckled. "Rheneas, I've had a far better time here on this railway. There's a lot more friends here, it's a longer line, and lots of things to do. I'm much happier being on this railway with all of you." Knowing that there was no time like the present made Rheneas feel very happy. The engines on the island of Sodor are always busy huffing and puffing up and down the line. But they aren't the only ones that work hard on Sodor. Bertie the bus is always busy taking people up and down Thomas's branch line. Terrence the tractor is always hard at work in his field. Trevor the traction engine is always busy helping the vicar and the lorry run the vicarage orchard. But Harold the helicopter thinks that he's the busiest out of everyone on Sodor, and he likes to let people know it too. One day, Percy pulled in with the mail train to the airfield. Percy yawned. He was very tired. He had been up all night pulling the mail train. "What are you moaning about?" asked Harold. "I'm tired," Percy huffed. Harold laughed. "From the mail train? Percy, you are quite the weak engine." Percy was upset. Just then Thomas pulled in. "Good morning, Percy." "Hello, Harold." "Hello, Percy. Hello, Harold," said the coaches. "So far there's been nothing good about it," huffed Percy. "He's moaning over nothing," Harold butted in. "I've been up all night with the mail, and now I have to take empty milk tankers to the dairy," he huffed. "I should be the one moaning, Percy," said Harold. "I'm the busiest on the island." The engines disagreed with Harold. "We're all busy," huffed Thomas. Suddenly, Harold's pilot ran up. "Harold, there's an emergency! A hiker got stuck overnight on Devil's Back in the Caldyfell Mountains. We need to go rescue him." "Right away," Harold said. His pilot climbed into his cab. "I'm always busy, but you never hear me complain," and Harold flew away. The little tank engines were cross. Harold the helicopter flew high in the air. He flew over Wellsworth and high above Gordon's Hill. "Always in need and all the work's put on me." Harold began to climb the mountain. Harold searched around, but he couldn't find the climber. Finally, he found the climber at the top of the mountain. Harold hovered down. The climber was relieved to see him. He climbed aboard Harold. Harold's pilot checked the climber for any injuries. After the pilot had examined the climber, Harold set off the mountain and flew down to the valley. Harold began his trip back to Knapford. "Always in need and all the work's put on me." Finally, Harold arrived at Knapford Station. Bertie the bus was waiting to take the climbers to the hospital. As the climber was transported to Bertie, Harold watched the busy hustle and bustle of the train station. Harold thought for a moment about how busy they were too. Maybe Thomas and Percy were right about them being busy. Once the climber was aboard Bertie, he drove away. "Bye, Harold," called Bertie. But Harold didn't hear him. He was too busy watching and thinking about the busy engines. Soon Harold flew back to the airfield. He hardly spoke for the rest of the morning. That afternoon, Thomas arrived to drop some passengers off. "So how's the busiest helicopter on Sodor?" asked Thomas. Harold was quiet. Just then Percy stopped by. Percy purposely ignored Harold. Harold felt bad for being so ignorant. Finally he spoke up. "Percy, Thomas, I realize that I'm not the only one that's busy on Sodor. I see now that you guys work hard too to be really useful." Thomas smiled, but Percy was still cross. "I'm sorry, Percy," said Harold. Percy couldn't stay cross forever. Harold was his friend. "It's all right," smiled Percy, and together the three of them were very happy. One day, Sir Topham Hatt came to visit the narrow-gauge engines with some important news. You all know about the Tallylin Railway, correct? Of course, sir. Me and Skarloey's twin live there. Yes, indeed. The Tallylin Railway is a narrow-gauge line like ours. So what's the point? The coaches had put Duncan in a grumpy mood. The controller of the Tallylin Railway says that their engines are rushed off their wheels and need some help. He wants one of you to visit and help out. Before Sir Topham Hatt could finish, his ears were drowned with the sound of joyful engine whistles. All the engines wanted to go and visit. I was thinking Rheneas could go, since he has a twin that lives there and they haven't seen each other for a long time. Rheneas was excited. Thank you, sir. A few days later, Skarloey and Rheneas were at the sheds. Rheneas was waiting for Henry to take him to the mainland. Skarloey looked sad. Don't be so sad. Skarloey gave a weak smile. I'll miss you. I'll miss you too. Just then, Henry bustled in. Hurry along, we can't be late. Henry got the breakdown crane, and Rheneas was loaded onto a flatbed. Goodbye, my friend. Goodbye. Don't forget to say hello to Tallylin for me. I won't forget. And with the guard's whistle, Henry was off. Goodbye. He watched until his friend was out of sight. Skarloey sighed. He now felt very lonely. Duke pulled up. He came to collect some coaches. Is he gone? Yes, he is. It'll be okay. He'll be back before you even know it. That's what they said when they took him to the works. But that felt like forever. It won't be that long. Skarloey smiled. Thank you, Duke, for being so kind. At least I know he will be back. You were stuck in that shed all those years, and you didn't even know if you would ever see a friend again. Duke chuckled. But now I'm here and happier than ever. And with that, Duke went to go get his coaches. Skarloey was quiet for the next few days. He huffed up and down the line to get his work done without fuss. The other engines felt sorry for Skarloey, but they didn't know what they could do to help him. Every morning, Skarloey would wake up and ask his driver if Rheneas was coming home that day, and each day his driver would reply, Sorry, old boy, not today. When will he come back? Soon. Skarloey didn't think soon was soon enough. One day, Peter, Sam, and Sir Handel were waiting in some sheds when Skarloey went past with a goods train. He stopped at a red signal. Peter Sam had just told a funny joke, and he and Sir Handel were laughing. Skarloey, would you like to hear my joke? Rheneas liked jokes, Skarloey thought to himself, but it wouldn't be the same without Rheneas. No thank you, Peter Sam, and he puffed away. The sooner Rheneas gets back, the better. Agreed. The next few days, Skarloey didn't really talk to anyone. This made some of the other engines cross. One morning, Skarloey woke to his driver telling him the good news, that Rheneas would be coming home the next day. Skarloey worked extra hard that day. That night, Skarloey had to take a train of empty trucks up to the quarry. By the time he delivered them, it was very late. His driver decided to have Skarloey stay the night in the shed up at the quarry. Skarloey barely slept that night. He was so excited for Rheneas to come home. The next morning, his driver showed up. Skarloey anxiously raced down the line to the sheds. When he arrived, James had just finished helping to unload Rheneas off a flatbed. All the little engines surrounded Rheneas, asking questions about the Tallylin Railway. Skarloey had no room to sneak in by the others. so he sat in the siding behind the sheds, while Rheneas told them tales of the faraway railway. After a long time, the engines left to work. Rheneas was tired from storytelling and wanted to rest. He was also curious to know where his best friend was. Skarloey rolled up. He was so excited to see Rheneas. The two friends chatted and chatted. Rheneas told him about how the twins were, and Skarloey told him about how much he had missed him. Rheneas was flattered. I guess what matters most is that the little red friends are back together. And Skarloey couldn't agree more. Hello, I'm Lori number 2. If you enjoyed this video, click the subscribe button to subscribe for more Thomas and Friends videos. You can also check out more videos on our YouTube channel by clicking the Visit Channel button. If you want to learn more about the up-and-coming latest adventures from Sodor, and to find out about the latest updates, then click the News Blog button. You can also check out the Google Plus and our Facebook page by clicking a link in the description. We hope to see you again soon. Come back often for more videos.